I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Alright, are you streaming live today?
We are streaming live.
Alright, I kind of felt it. I wasn't sure, but there was a little tingle there, you know what I mean? And I said, yep, feels like we're streaming.
Somebody staring at you, I bet.
Hey, I see that there's still a lot of talk here about the wall, and especially in San Diego, and I guess mainly the talk is three words. Where's the wall, right?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is, I think there's been some news published on this, but what we're seeing is an uptick in cartels and traffickers moving across the border, and they're just going east of, the downtown San Diego area out in East County, and residents are fearful that, these people will, start coming onto their properties and committing, home invasions of sorts. So they've actually put a layer of wall up themselves, so they don't have to worry or rely just on the kind of the railroad type wall that the U.S. government has put up along that southern border.
Can you explain to the listener exactly where most of the crossings have been taking place to the other near developments that you just mentioned here? Because I've seen mentions in reports where they go across, is it called the Tijuana River?
Yeah, well, that's one place to go, but we're on my website and in the stories that I released today, I actually have video where one resident put up cameras and captured somebody cutting a hole in his chain link fence and crossing back south of the border, had his shoes in his hands, hoping that, they wouldn't be able to track them. That's typically what these coyotes or drug traffickers do. And then you had Border Patrol, who's they can't cover every square foot of the border. It's impossible for them. So, but they had activity earlier in the day, and they'd seen drug traffickers moving across this East County region in San Diego. So we're looking at maybe 20 miles inland from the ocean, let's say, as a crow flies. And so you're seeing, so that there is kind of a wall out there, but not really. You can actually walk a mile or two around it, and you can, you don't have to cut through any kind of wall because it'd just be a barrier. Or you see them digging, going underneath it, and slipping under. But residents have been growing increasingly uncomfortable with this increased activity, and they placed their own, fence along their property lines, and now they're seeing property damage from people who are crossing the border illegally. And this one particular resident took video of it with those cameras that turn on when activity is detected. So that's what's happened in this case. And so we're seeing an uptick east in San Diego because, of course, in San Diego proper, we've got the Triplelayer border fence. Nobody's coming across there. So they're just moving east where they can do it, where the border wall is not necessarily even a wall.
All right, let me see here. I lived in San Diego for a while, but I'm not really that familiar with it anymore. It's my Alzheimer's, right? Yes, I think that's what it is. I can't remember what it is to tell you the truth, but so they're moving east, okay? Are they moving into a more
rural? It's a rural. It's a rural. Yeah, it's a place where people can live on an acre lot or 10-acre lots. It just depends.
Yeah.
So you're talking about sparsely dense. There's just not a lot of population necessarily there. They're moving. They're seeing that at night they don't have like street lights like we do in the city, and so it's making easier for them to come across a border. So instead of just
they're going through what the ranchers here on Texas.
Yeah.
And Arizona has been witnessing forever.
Yeah.
And you were down there too,
Yeah.
Hey, we got to take a bottom of the hour break, and we'll be back here in just a moment. But I guess it's not necessarily that it's an upper class of people are now getting the influx. It's just that everybody's getting. And of course, you can't put a sign up that says you're not allowed beyond this point because it would be ignored.
Yeah.
Hey, the website is KDReport.com. More from Kimberly Dvorak, CRS. Well, they're here with my guest Kimberly Dvorak and TV correspondent CW60 San Diego, One American News Network. And you can get her report at
Exactly. They had real big issues on the border of California and Arizona. A couple of years back, they built a triple-layer fence, and it just decreased criminal activity tenfold. So you're looking at a system that actually works if you have a triple-layer fence, meaning there's a fence that's on the side of Mexico, then there's a fence on the U.S. side, then there's a fence in the middle with roads going down either side. You cut a hole in that fence, you go under that fence, you try to climb over that fence, you're going to hit sensors immediately, and you're going to be able to deploy Border Patrol agents to the scene much quicker and much more efficiently. That's something that's going to, obviously cost taxpayers money, or Mexico, I guess. President Trump last night, went right back to saying that Mexico is going to pay for it, and they're going to like paying for it, which I have no doubt that he'll come up with a way. Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. I mean, I want to go back to, let's go back to Nixon when he came into office, and he said that, the drugs had gotten completely out of control. He called up the president of Mexico at the time. This is like early in his, his first quarter of being president. He calls up Mexico and says, hey, you guys have we need to deal with this drug issue. And the president of Mexico says, no, Mr. President, you have a drug issue. We have no such issue here. Hangs up the phone. President Nixon shuts down the border completely, and there's no trade coming back and forth. And then, of course, the president of Mexico calls right back and says, Mr. Nixon, how can I help you? So there are ways, and as we see Trump do his work his negotiations with the Iran nuclear deal, the North Korea nuclear deal, Mexico is certainly going to be feeling the heat, because he will turn his ire their direction. And they have a huge trade surplus with this country, and they send all of their, a lot of the people that are in this country send their money home, back to Mexico. And the easy way to do it would say, okay, well, you can send your money home, but there's going to be a 1% or 2% fee on every dollar that you take and send out of this country, and that could probably add up pretty quickly and pay for the wall. So,
I may be wrong, but that's the number 2 money source.
Yeah.
The highest money that goes into Mexico. It's like the oil and gas is still number 1.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Because of the violence, tourism used to be the second highest, but because of all the violence and the cartel action, and, it's a complete free-for-all down there now. And in fact, the world's most deadly city now is Cancun, Mexico, not, I believe it was before it was Rio de Janeiro. But now you've got the number 1 most violent city in the world is in Mexico. So, tourists just aren't going down there like they used to. So what you're seeing with Mexico, we're living next to one of the second or third most deadly countries in the world. We live right next door to them. And the primary source of all of this is cartel activity. So it's in our interest to work with Mexico to solve this, I believe. But it's also in Mexico's interest to work with the United States, because if it wasn't for the receipts and the monies heading, south of the border, and, the U.S. having a trade, deficit with Mexico, they wouldn't, I don't know how they would, subside. I think they couldn't take care of themselves. Let's put it that way.
Well, you know what, and speaking of paying for the wall, weeks ago, President Trump was saying that building the wall and paying for it was in his plan, the renegotiation of the NAFTA treaty.
Yeah.
And that's going to be included. I don't know where that stands now, though.
Well, when I was in D.C. my last trip, I'm there every 2 weeks now, I was going to the Mexican embassy event, and the keynote speaker was supposed to be the ambassador of Mexico. So that was like the big play for us journalists and people to go, sit and listen and mingle with the Mexican embassy officials. But at the last minute, then we got an email saying that he couldn't make it because there had been complications with NAFTA. And this is an ongoing negotiation that has not finished, and both sides are pleading their case. How long the president will wait for the negotiators to come up with a final deal. That remains to be seen. But I think as we get closer to the 2018 midterms here in November, I think you're going to see a little bit more action on that border, because the president realizes that's one of the number one promises that he made on the campaign trail. And since he's busy checking off box after box after box, he's going to want to come back at this in an effort to keep the Congress, in the red and hold the Senate, which they should hold the Senate in any event. But it would make the president's next 2 years a lot more easy if they didn't lose both houses. So, he's going to be doing something that will, placate his followers. And the majority of his followers, supporters, Democrats or Republicans or Independents, they want that wall. And they want the immigration system fixed. And and that was just that's a no-brainer for the president to go after. So I would imagine we start seeing something by the end of summer. We'll start seeing some of the terms of this NAFTA deal coming out.
Well, if the Mexican president wants to pull the Russian tactic and, bring his shoe on the table or something, there's a report that came out that you can check out today, Kimberly. The United Nations Human Rights Office has strong indications now that the Mexican Federal Security Forces are behind a wave of disappearance in and around the city of Nuevo Laredo, Texas. Okay, and that just came out today. And they have like more than 40, and a lot of them are children too,
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, well, the cartels are primarily behind this, and since we've seen El Chapo, arrested, brought to America, that leaves a little bit of gap at who's actually going to run the cartels and who's going to be the leader in the cartels. However, the Sinaloa cartel remains the number one cartel out there, despite several challenges by Los Zetas. It's just, the Sinaloa is basically run by a financier, Mr. Zambada. He's very unknown here in this country. His son's sitting in Chicago prison for another couple of years for trafficking drugs, but he's actually the finance guy behind the scenes, and that's why the United States still can't find El Chapo's money, because that money wasn't necessarily his. And the cartels continue to run. But the cartels are also becoming increasingly violent. They're taking on a lot of the similar tactics that the terrorists have been taking on. And there's been recent reports as well that the terrorists are actually going to Mexico, and they're working with the cartels and their members and giving them actual, training on how to assassinate people, how to set IED bombs, how to cross the border, how to build tunnels. All of these things that we typically see in the Middle East are now coming home to Mexico, and this is why you're seeing the uptick in violence down there.
Now then, I wanted to ask you, did you see that report I sent to you that went out on the
Yeah.
about in Las Vegas and the wall?
Yeah, I
It
did.
was very interesting, and basically for the listener, you just talk about, all these gated communities and these high walls, not border security, but wall security,
Yeah.
police around them, and you got to show proper ID to get in, and everybody fighting behind one of the walls.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing how, and especially the Hollywood elite, we don't need any walls. That Trump is crazy money to build walls. Well, I got to go home now and then make sure that my gate will work and I can get in and my security guards know I'm coming so they don't accidentally shoot me. And,
Yeah.
hypocrisy, it is unbelievable.
Well, it is, and I heard you in the run-up to my segment talking about the Roseanne Barr show that was just canceled by ABC. Again, here we have like the center of hypocrisy. You see on virtually every night of the Jimmy Kimmel show, it's bashing President Trump, and you look at Oberman, who's he used the F word multiple times and referred to the president as a Nazi, and used the F word a few more times and referred to him as a Nazi person again. That's someone that they just hired over at ESPN, and they're expanding his duties. Why is he not losing his job? Why? You look at these issues. What she said,
But I'll tell you what,
not,
AOL News, and AOL is left, whatever
Yeah.
you go to the website. It started out that Trump tweeted ABC, and the report, according to AOL, okay, says that once again, Trump had to make it all
exactly.
On what the stuff they've done.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing is the View, all right? I do not watch the View. I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times in my life. But I mean, I hear nothing but bad things
Yeah.
being quoted from the View, and it's like, what in the world are they still on, you know?
Yeah.
It's this double standard unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I think, you kind of, this is why, Americans, and you're seeing more Americans turn to streaming, TV over cable. I mean, the cutting of the cord is happening in massive numbers, and now you've got cable companies, out there running around trying to figure out how they can, keep people watching their shows. In the end, I think that there's going to be either a rival network. I would almost guess that Fox, not their news network channel, but the regular Fox, where they air their TV programs, would pick up something like Roseanne. I mean, her numbers were off the charts, and so she made a stupid comment that was probably hurtful. Most people don't even know who Valerie Jarrett is, so I don't even know how many people really understood the joke in the first place. But was it worth ABC doing this?
Now that you mentioned it, all of a sudden Facebook, all of the stuff that's pro-conservative
Yeah.
is saying, well, let's show you her background in communism. See?
Yeah.
Not Roseanne, but, what's her face? Yeah, I mean, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Here's a lady, Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah.
Look at her communist leanings and all this stuff, and her Muslim leadership, and goes on and on.
Yeah.
So it's sort of backfiring. People say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know that about her."
Yeah.
Too late now. She served 8 years,
Yeah.
living 2 doors down from Magellan for Rock. Okay, so
Yeah.
there.
But I mean, in the end, when you look at the issue, you have to look at it fundamentally as a First Amendment issue. I mean, the First Amendment doesn't say that if you say something mean to your neighbor, you say something mean about the president, you say something mean about the gardeners or the police officers, whatever. It doesn't say that you can't say mean things. It's there to protect that particular speech. It may be offensive to most, but that's what the First Amendment is for, is to protect the hate speech and to protect the speech. I mean, right now it's like if you say one thing out of line, it's like all of a sudden you can lose your job, your livelihood, everything you've worked towards. I mean, is this really where we're going as a society? We want to have a society that's just completely zoned out on drugs for fear that they say something that someone else may find offensive? And you're and I, our generation, we speak in a different kind of language than the millennials, and they will sometimes find the way we speak, they're, oh my God, I can't believe you would say something like that. But words had a different meaning back then. They actually meant what they said.
The colleges, especially in California, they got a solution, right? That no free speech allowed on campus.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like, no, I don't want to hear it. No.
shocking. Yeah, it's troublesome, and I think that once this comes full circle and things start to collapse, I hope it's not too late. I hope that the millennials are going to wake up and actually realize what the Constitution was written about and realize what the Bill of Rights actually mean, and not that we have to protect everybody.
Unfortunately, I think the indoctrination has broke down about 90%. It's very hard to turn
Yeah,
around.
it is. In California.
You mentioned, Fox, and of course it wouldn't be, Fox cable, but Fox TV, right?
Yeah.
The Roseanne show.
Yeah.
I heard that, so I had to say somewhere, but it's a rumor. And then, Fox may have some competition in Sinclair broadcasting.
Yep.
Because, they're really talking about it, and they're going out to get certain people,
Mm-hmm.
that they think will really work. And
Yeah.
I saw some of the people they were mentioning, and who knows, but
Well, I believe Bill O'Reilly is one of he's like under talks. I know Bill O'Reilly was under talks with One America at one point, but he obviously being his name, so he has such name recognition that he is demanding a lot more money than some people want to pay out. But yeah, Sinclair's going to definitely make a run at Fox. I think that there's room for competition for Fox News. I think that there's definitely room for for another cable network to make a run at it, and also, you know, using the streaming live as another source of income and another source for people to watch it. So when you're on TV, you watch. Has helped many countries around the world build walls. Apparently, when it comes to building our own, we're not so good at it.
Yeah, I think we did a report on that one time.
I believe so.
The money and the labor to use to build walls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Chinese built the Great Wall, and they did that without cranes and engineers, and I mean, it's still standing. The Great Wall of China is still there. No, I think the latest, trick that a lot of the, left and a lot of Republicans as well, in all fairness, comes down to, there's a lizard that lives in that area that we really, really need that lizard there. And, or, there's a, rare butterfly that nobody even knows what it is. But if you build a wall, it's not going to be able to go back and forth. But what people don't realize is without a wall, the ranchers who live along the border, there are ranchers on the other side of the border as well in Mexico, and their cows come up to and cross the border, and they go into the grazeland of the U.S. Farmers, and their cattle are getting sick because they don't care for their animals in Mexico as we do here, and don't have that standard. So, I mean, these are just a multitude of issues that can be prevented, and if there's a will to prevent this. So far, there hasn't been anybody that said that they're going to do it. And like I said at the top of the hour on this, I really believe that Trump is going to come up with something, and we're going to hear more about this when we get close to this midterm election, because he.
You mentioned in this report that was part of his campaign speech.
Yeah.
That big beautiful wall.
Yep, big beautiful wall. He doesn't care.
Way off subject, but between LA and San Diego, I saw a report 4 weeks ago, I think, in the paper about how they want to build tunnels under the freeway, especially around the Temecula area, I think. Anyway, because the food line can't cross.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? They're actually running over the freeway.
Yeah.
So build a tunnel.
Well, I mean, how far do we go? I mean, in California what we did with the Delta smelt. It wasn't even a native fish to California, and yet it killed off all of our almond trees and, took away a lot of the farmland. We had the breadbasket of California. Politicians don't care. If there's money to be made for them or their family.
We do care for our animals unless they've got a whole bunch of tattoos and there's an M and a /13, okay?
Yeah, that may be one we don't care about. That's for sure.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next week.
Okay, thank you.